Sudan is a country that most Americans cannot locate on a map, and even fewer Americans know anything about Sudan. But why does that matter? Sudan straddles the Nile River, the longest river in the world, which supports the livelihoods of over 200 million people. It is also situated along the Red Sea, through which $1 trillion in global trade passes, 12% of the global total. Go watch my video on Djibouti if you want to learn more about that. The country is embroiled in internal conflict and has been for a long time. 3 countries in particular have strategic interests in Sudan: Russia, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. Abu Dhabi, along with Russian contractors, are supporting one side, the Rapid Support Forces or RSF. Riyadh has thrown its weight behind the Sudanese state. This is a war in which both sides have committed egregious human rights violations. The RSF have been accused of many unsavory things, such as extrajudicial killings, indiscriminate attacks on civilians, and sexual violence. The Janjaweed militias, from which the RSF sprang, were responsible for causing what was once the world's worst humanitarian crisis in Darfur. In this video, we're going to examine what Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Russia are doing in Sudan. Before we get started, a quick word from my sponsor, Ground News.
The news is divided. Ground News puts it back together, so you can see how many sources are reporting on any breaking story, where they fall on the political spectrum, how reliable they are, and who owns them. Compare headlines and read full articles to see which details are prioritized, exaggerated, or left out entirely. Because the more we understand the media, the more we'll understand each other. Visit ground.news to learn more.
With my thanks to Ground News, back to the video. Officially, Riyadh and Abu Dhabi are allies and both are security partners of America's in the region. However, this does not mean that the two countries do not also have competing interests. The UAE and Saudi Arabia are the 2 largest economies in the Arab world, and as I mentioned in a previous video, the Arab world doesn't quite have a Prussia or Piedmont Sardinia to rule over it. Therefore, there is a constant state of competition between the Arab world's more powerful states. That being said, the shared threat posed by Iran to the Saudis and Emiratis has forced them to cooperate rather than compete. In 2023, however, Riyadh normalized ties with Tehran. The tensions between Saudi Arabia and the UAE date back to 2009, when the two countries clashed over where to establish the GCC's proposed central bank. The GCC voted to house the bank in the UAE, but the Saudis pulled out of the agreement. Neither the bank nor the common GCC currency came to fruition. Now, the differences between the two have begun to surface. These differences came to a head in the ongoing war in Yemen. In March 2015, Saudi Arabia launched Operation Decisive Storm, aiming to destroy the threat posed by the Houthis in Yemen. The UAE was part of a multinational Arab and African coalition participating in the Saudi-led operation. Still, Abu Dhabi and Riyadh had conflicting objectives. The latter supported the then recently ousted Yemeni president Abdurabu Mansur Hadi. The former supported the Southern Transitional Council in Yemen's south. If you'd like to learn more about Yemen's north-south divide, you can do so here. The Emiratis were able to take control of key seaports and islands surrounding Yemen and bolster their presence on the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and the Horn of Africa. Another arena of Saudi-Emirati competition is in Washington. After the 2018 killing of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi, relations cooled between the US and Saudi Arabia. This, coupled with Abu Dhabi's signing of the 2020 Abraham Accords to normalize relations with Israel, only upgraded the UAE's status in Washington. The US suspended arms sales to the Saudis over its war in Yemen, though interestingly enough, the Emiratis were poised to purchase the F-35 from the US. That still has not materialized though. Had this deal gone through, the UAE would have been the first Arab state to purchase the F-35. Still, both countries are underneath the US security umbrella and have made remaining so a foreign policy priority. So how does this competition tie into Sudan? Well, let me explain. In April 2019, Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir was ousted in a military coup. Immediately, the UAE and Saudi Arabia furnished aid, $3 billion to be exact, to the new military junta. At this point in time, both countries' interests in the region ran parallel to each other. But why are the Saudis and Emiratis interested in Sudan in particular? For starters, Sudan is rich in natural resources and it is strategically positioned between Africa and the Middle East, acting as a sort of bridge between the two regions. Riyadh and Abu Dhabi, as the two heavyweights in the GCC, are looking to flex their muscles and cement their status as hegemons both in the Middle East and in Africa. So now let me talk about the Saudi-Emirati showdown in Sudan more specifically. Saudi Arabia's ties to Sudan go back to the country's independence in 1956. Sudan was in close proximity to Saudi Arabia and more importantly to Mecca and Medina, the two holiest sites in Islam. Therefore, there had been people-to-people contact between the two countries for quite a long time. So the current war in Sudan is just the latest iteration of a series of wars that have plagued the country. This current round of fighting began in April 2023 during Ramadan. Members of the RSF were redeployed to areas throughout the country which the Sudanese army viewed as a threat. There had been tensions brewing between the military and the RSF, and these tensions would escalate into a full-scale war. On one side, there are the Sudanese armed forces under Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, which enjoy the support of Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Opposing them are the Rapid Support Forces under Mohammed Hamdan Hemedti Dagalo. But why are the UAE and Saudi Arabia aiding opposing sides? For Abu Dhabi, it's about natural resources. The Emiratis have purchased agricultural land and gold mines that were once under RSF control. The UAE is the world's third largest gold importer as of 2023. Gold makes up more than half of Sudan's exports. Abu Dhabi officially denies funding and arming the RSF, but it is worth noting that the UAE recently pledged to send $200 million in aid to Sudan. Here is one thing to remember about the Gulf Arab states in particular. These societies are still largely tribe-based. Large business concerns are oftentimes controlled by members of tribes more closely related to the ruling family. Essentially, these large corporations act as arms of the state in many ways. Now let me talk a little bit about some of the atrocities committed by the Rapid Support Forces. Make no mistake, this is a war in which neither side has clean hands, but the RSF are waist-deep in blood. According to Amnesty International, despite multiple ceasefire declarations, fighting intensified. According to the UN, more than 12,000 people were killed between April and December nationwide. In October, it was reported that about 15 million people, 31% of the population, were acutely food insecure. The article continues with, fighters, mostly RSF, engaged in widespread looting of homes, businesses, and public institutions, including hospitals, humanitarian organizations, warehouses, and banks in Khartoum and the Darfur region. As mentioned in the beginning of the video, the RSF has been accused of indiscriminate attacks, extrajudicial killings, and sexual violence. On May 13, 2023, RSF members broke into the Mar Girgis St. George's Coptic Church in the Bahri area of Khartoum. They shot and wounded 5 clergy members and stole money and a gold cross. On May 21, 2023, at least 7 people were killed and 12 injured in a strike on the Ministry of Agriculture in the northern part of the Al-Jamarik neighborhood of El Geneina in West Darfur, where many residents took refuge after abandoning their homes. Many ethnic Masalit people, mostly men and boys, fell victim to ethnically motivated attacks which killed and wounded many. The RSF have also been accused of raping girls as young as 12. RSF members once kidnapped 24 women and girls and held them in conditions equivalent to sexual slavery for several days, repeatedly raping these girls. Both sides have engaged in sexual violence, but the RSF have been the primary perpetrators. Now, how do the Russians fit into this? Russian private military contractors, formerly under the Wagner Group, now the Africa Corps, have been involved in Africa for years. Go watch my video on Russian mercenary activities in Africa if you want to learn more. Libya and the Central African Republic, where Russian PMCs are also present, served as hubs for Wagner Group activities in Sudan. Prior to the outbreak of the current hostilities in April 2023, Wagner was in contact with the RSF, training forces and guarding gold mines. These Russian PMCs act as agents of the Russian state with a veneer of plausible deniability. The purpose of these PMCs is to secure Russian access to Africa's natural resources. More importantly though, the actual Russian military has had a vested interest in Sudan. In February 2025, Sudan announced that a final deal for a Russian naval base in the country had been concluded. This would be Russia's first naval base in Africa. The matter had been discussed under former President Omar al-Bashir, but talks were delayed after al-Bashir's overthrow. An agreement was reportedly reached in 2017, which allowed for the stationing of several hundred Russian troops and 4 ships. Moscow has also wanted to maintain ties with the Sudanese government for the purpose of hedging its bets and for constructing the naval base. In April 2024, Moscow pledged to supply Khartoum with quote-unquote unrestricted qualitative military aid. Sudan is locked in a destructive civil war that has killed and displaced scores of people. Like other African conflicts, external players who view the continent through the lens of great power competition have influenced and shaped the course of Sudan's civil war. The ones who pay the biggest price are not the Sudanese government or the RSF or the Russians, but the Sudanese people. What do you guys think? How will the Russian presence in Africa evolve following the construction of the naval base in Sudan? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.